Alright guys, welcome back for another video on HAIKYU Fly High, and today I'm gonna do a guide on Nishinoya, talking through his kit, how to play him correctly, and also probably touch about his potential and some good team formation that you can play around with him. The reason why I decided to do this video now, even though Nishinoya has been out for a while, is because previously Nishinoya was the only SSR Libero in the game, so there's kind of no competition. You are kind of forced to play him regardless what team you're going with. However, that's going to soon change because we are going to get Yaku very soon in the new select recruit banner, and also we are going to get Yamagata as well. So now when it's actually multiple options that you can pick for your Libero, it's actually a good idea to understand the pros and cons of each one of them, and that's kind of why I want to do a bit of a deep dive on Nishinoya now. So I'm going to start off with just a quick rundown of his skills. Obviously, I'm not going to read it out. You guys can read it yourself. But on a first glance, the number one thing you should notice is that he's able to buff power type attackers, okay? So his skill 1 is able to buff it by 15% of the power spike, and then his ultimate skill is also able to reduce the cooldown of the next power spike by 6 net crossing. Both of them are conditional, however, they are only going to synergize with power type players, so therefore if you are trying to go down the route of a quick attacking team, you already know Nishinoya is not going to be a great fit, and in fact for those kind of teams, Yaku is going to be a better choice for those quick spike teams. Nishinoya is very much more for the power spike teams. Now, how do you then want to decide which power spike team Nishinoya is actually going to be good for? One of the main selling point of Nishinoya is going to be his ultimate attack. The fact that he's actually able to reduce the cooldown of the next power spike by 6 net crossing. This is massive. Vast majority of the time, this means your damage dealer, your main spiker, can actually do his ultimate attack twice in a row. Now, depending on who is going to be your damage dealer, this may be a good thing or may not really matter much. So for example, Ushijima at 2 dupe, he's already capable of reducing his cooldown massively, and therefore this is not really going to make a massive difference to Ushijima. And same thing with Bakuto, who is not in the game right now, but will be coming out very soon. At 6 dupe, he also have the potential to spam his ultimate attack, and once again, this is not going to make much impact to him. However, the two examples I have mentioned both require dupes on them. So instead, let's say if your main spiker is actually Ushijima but only at 0 dupe, or you have a Bakuto but he's only at 0 dupe or 2 dupe, so definitely not 6 dupe, in order to actually spam his ultimate attack, then Nishinoya is then all of a sudden going to become a very good pairing with them, because you are then able to basically cheat your way through with your ultimate attack so that your main spiker can still do it twice in a row without needing those extra dupes. So that's basically going to be the main reason when you're deciding whether you want to play Nishinoya in a power spiking team, okay? Now, outside of this, there are also obviously other skills. So Nishinoya also have a save skill. This is pretty much standard. Vast majority of Libero have both a save skill and also a receive skill. So there's nothing much to talk about him. But then also there's this thing, his skill suite. You're able to increase team morale by 18. Now, if you take a look at the trigger condition, this is when you enter the court, which basically means that you can actually trigger this twice if your Nishinoya is coming in and out, which to be honest, as a Libero, you would be doing that. And vast majority of the time, you will be able to trigger this twice regardless as well, okay? So don't just think about this as a flat 18. Vast majority of the time, it should actually be 36 because you are able to trigger this twice, depending on the team rotation. And then we also want to talk about the fact that because you're able to increase your team morale, obviously this is also going to be a good synergy with Fukudani teams, such as Bakuto, who is going to be heavily reliant on team morale, okay? So once again, you guys can already see a bit of a more natural synergy between Nishinoya and also Bakuto, for the fact that both he's able to reset the cooldown for your Bakuto if he's not 6-2, but also this team morale in order for him to stay in his kind of morale stage a bit longer. So that's kind of the quick rundown of this. Now, so over this are basically the strengths of Nishinoya. However, there's also one very glaring disadvantage of Nishinoya, and that's once again coming into his ultimate attack. He has to consume 20 additional stamina to perform this ultimate attack, which is massive. What that normally means is that after 2 stamina, you are probably going to be reducing your stamina so much that Nishinoya is going to have reduced stats. I think you will end up with reduced stats when your stamina is less than 25 or 30 or some kind of like low threshold, and then when it's actually 0, you won't be able to activate any skills at all. So it's definitely not a good thing to get Nishinoya's stamina too low, and a lot of time this is going to be problematic because a lot of time he will just run out of stamina after just probably like 3 or 4 rallies, and then you would either be stuck with someone with reduced stats, or you are forced to bring a backup option for him. Now, how do we actually mitigate this? So the easiest way is obviously to actually have a backup option, right? So I talked about earlier at the start of the video, right? Very soon we're going to have 2 other SSR Libero in the game. So before, if your Nishinoya have the stamina issue, it's going to be pretty annoying because your backup is going to be an SR character at the best. However, now you can actually have the option of having an SSR Libero as a backup option for Nishinoya. So this is definitely going to have a way of mitigating the stamina issue, provided you have another second SSR Libero, okay? The other way of doing that would be simply get his skill resonance to dupe 2. Now, basically, this would then reduce the stamina consumption from 20 to 10. This, in my experience, doesn't solve it completely. I still find Nishinoya run out of stamina towards the end of match, but you are able to increase the longevity by at least, I want to say, another 2 or 3 turns, which is already going to be a massive improvement to Nishinoya. And sometimes you may have already won the match by then as well. So this is definitely going to be a massive upgrade for Nishinoya. And if you do want to play him, I would strongly recommend get him to at least dupe 2, okay? Now, in terms of his dupe 6 ability, I think that can be skipped because in all honesty, it's a one-time boost to your first receive and save. However, vast majority of the time, your first receive and save tend to be going quite well anyway. One of the effects that it cannot be, it will be at least normal, okay? So it can't be bad. But once again, your receive is also that vast majority of the time it wouldn't be bad, and then your save can be pretty decent as well. So I just don't think the boost in his dupe 6 ability that strong. So vast majority of the time I will only recommend you guys to get to dupe 2, okay? Now, there is going to be one other way of further mitigating the stamina issue for Nishinoya. However, there is pros and cons with this approach, and that's going to be due to your team rotation. So basically, if we go into team building and we take a look at your subsetting, basically there's this option to switch out Libero, and you can choose which position to swap him out. And basically the idea is that for whichever time when that position is at the back, Nishinoya will be there to actually replace him. However, there's going to be one exception, and that's going to be when that person with that position is going to be the one serving. And that's because liberals can't serve in this game. So therefore, basically what that means is that if this person is in the serving position, Nishinoya won't be there. However, let's say if you lost a point and you're no longer serving, then Nishinoya can be out to replace him, or maybe the next rotation down when he's no longer in the serving position, then your liberal, such as Nishinoya, can then once again come onto the field to actually replace him. Now, this is where then you can get a bit creative with your team rotation, because if we actually start off with a position that you actually want Nishinoya to replace, what that basically means Nishinoya wouldn't come onto the court straight away on the first turn, and therefore you'll be delaying when Nishinoya comes onto the court. And then likewise, because in this game, vast majority of the matches are first to 5, and vast majority of the times that basically means you will be comfortably doing at least 3 rotations. So even if you start off with one mid blocker, let's say as the position you want to swap, you start off with this in the serving position, very likely later on in the match, your other mid blocker will be rotated to front, because it only takes you lose 3 points in order for you to achieve this. And once again, when this happens, Nishinoya can't actually be in this position because this position needs to serve. So if you actually think about that, let's say in the first 4 rotations, what ends up happening is Nishinoya is only going to be on the court for 2 of them, and therefore you severely reduce the amount of time Nishinoya needs to be played, and therefore he doesn't need to consume so much stamina, and that can be one way of mitigating the stamina issue. However, this does come with a cost, which is the fact that if you remember, Nishinoya does have a skill 3, which is that whenever he enters the court, you are able to increase your team morale by 18 or even higher if he's a higher skill level. However, if you have this person starting off the match, the person you want to swap out, starting off as the serving position, what that basically means is that Nishinoya would only be able to come onto the field once after he has been rotated out, and therefore it's possible that you are only able to trigger the skill 3 once in this match. However, let's say if you don't actually do it this way, you start off with a different position. What's going to end up happening is that Nishinoya will be on the court on the very first turn and therefore already trigger his skill 3. And then eventually, as the rotation play around, Nishinoya will be coming out of the court, and then one rotation later, Nishinoya will be coming back in, and then as a result, you are able to trigger his skill 3 twice in the match, and therefore giving your team morale twice boost. Now, obviously, this is going to have advantage and disadvantage, so you kind of need to make a choice whether you want to start off with a position that you want to swap out to a Libero in order to conserve the stamina for Nishinoya, or whether you actually want to play outside of the serving position so that you are then able to trigger his skill 3 twice and give your team morale boost twice in the match as well. Okay, so there's pros and cons. You guys just need to decide what is going to be the best strategy depending on your team formation. Now, the last topic I'm going to cover today is going to be the potential build for Nishinoya. Now, this one's going to be quite straightforward because Nishinoya being a Libero means that he literally can't spike, he can't serve, he can't block, etc. So there is really only one potential set you can go with, which is going to be receive. Now, obviously, there are two different types of receive sets you can have in this game. One is going to be assist receive, which have this ability where when you have a perfect receive, you're able to increase your next spike power. And then you also have the supreme receive, which is only going to be conditional when you actually receive a quick spike. And obviously, out of the two, you want to go with assist receive, mainly because it's a bit more universal. So you are actually able to control when you're able to activate this, unlike this one, which is a bit more dependent on the opponent actually doing a quick spike. Okay, so that's kind of what I would recommend, doing a 4 set on the assist receive and only a 2 set on the supreme receive, just for the 2-piece effect. Okay, now in terms of the main stats and also substats, etc., obviously for a Libero, the main thing you want to look for is going to be receive and save. So try to go for as many receive and save as possible. You can also go for reflex and also spirit as well, if you want to build your Nishinoya with a bit more crit focus. Also, because Nishinoya doesn't really have any built-in crit increase, etc., I'll probably just go for the standard receive and also save rather than trying to go for a crit build of reflex and spirit. Okay, now the only other slot you may actually want to pay a bit more attention to is going to be your slot 2, and that's because the main stat for slot 2 is always going to be an attacking based one. However, because the Libero literally can't spike or serve, so all of those ones are going to be useless, and the only potentially relevant main stat for a Libero is going to be set. So not just for Nishinoya, but for any Libero, if you do actually want to optimize his potentials slot 2, what you can try to go for is going to be a main stat, which is actually going to be for a set, because yes, vast majority of the time your setter will be the one doing the setting. If for whatever reason your setter is the one actually receiving the ball first, then he won't actually be in position to actually set, and then having your Libero with a high set stats can actually potentially help for those kind of situation. Not to mention in the future when we actually have SP Liberos, they all have setting skills as well, so having a slot 2 potential with a set main stat can be useful even in the future when you eventually want to replace Nishinoya with like an SP Libero, etc. as well. Okay, so try to go for this if possible, but it's not a must-have. If you just happen to have another one with really good substat, you can also go for them instead. Okay, but yeah, so that's kind of the main thing you want to look out for Nishinoya. Hopefully you guys found this video helpful and help you guys to make a decision on whether you want to stick with Nishinoya or maybe potentially go for Yamagata and also HAIKYU in the future. And obviously I'll be creating more in-depth character guide for those two characters as well once they are actually in the game. Okay, so look forward for those videos in the future.